What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's News Tonight, episode 66. As you can see, I'm joined today by my good friends and GBG co-founders, Ash Paulson and Derek Bittner, as well as Ted from BrainScratch Commentaries. How you doing today, Ted?
I'm doing pretty good. I got myself a Banjo and Kazooie amiibo that I am looking forward to rip and destroy the packaging on as soon as we finish. And yeah, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's really nice to meet you. I know that you and I haven't met before this, so hopefully, you know, when everybody gets shots in arms and we're allowed to travel again, we can meet in person. But
I'm my first shot tomorrow. I am so stoked.
Mine is nice. Was supposed to be Saturday, is now Sunday, and I've never been more excited for a vaccine. Like I have
right?
I know, right?
Dude, I know. Like, yeah.
Like, could you imagine telling your pre-2021 self that you're going to see people posting vaccination records on Twitter and be like, damn you, I'm so jealous.
I know,
like,
right?
I want that shot in my arm.
I never imagined myself being so excited to get a shot. And like I was just walking on the moon. I got my first shot a week ago today. And after I was just like walking on air after I was like, oh man, I got my shot. This is great. Like, whoever thought that would be something to celebrate?
I know.
Weird world we live in.
It is a weird world we're in these days. Before we go further, though, I do have to thank our sponsor for this episode, not just for sponsoring this episode, but also for fixing my microphone. Straight-Lace, you're amazing. Yep. This episode is brought to you by Straight-Lace and the Soul Device. The Soul Device is a puzzle platformer where the player is able to place their own platforms in the environment to solve puzzles and navigate the world. The game starts off simple and introduces mechanics one at a time, but it's designed with the philosophy that puzzles can have multiple solutions depending on the player's collected abilities, creativities, and in some cases, skill. There are 9 unlockable devices in the game in addition to the starting Soul device, each one expanding the player's capabilities and options, 6 of which are completely optional for completing the game's simplest ending. The Soul device is available now on Steam, and if you choose to pick it up, Straight-Lace would appreciate feedback as a sequel is currently in development. Straight-Lace, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. You're a great supporter of the channel. We couldn't do this without you, and please, please, please go check out the Soul device on Steam, as well as Straight-Lace's YouTube channel, which is available in the chat, as well as in the description if you're watching this later on YouTube. With that, we got a lot of news to discuss and a couple stories that have been saved just for yours truly. So
we couldn't do them without you because we kind of know how much you're into it. So
hell yes, I appreciate my co-founders so much. So let's go ahead and throw the first one up here, and I am thrilled about this. I'm thrilled you guys saved this for me to be here. Well, kind of new. Chrono Trigger art was unearthed from an old Japanese PlayStation magazine called, aptly, The PlayStation. Destructoid kind of shared these out, and I've got to say, I am in love with what I'm seeing here. Just all this new Toriyama-style art of every major character from the game, and even some minor ones. But you can see Magus, Frog, Chrono, Ayla,
Luca,
Marl, Robo. Robo. I love Robo so much. Yeah,
it's interesting because it makes sense because they had to flesh it out because this is when they had the animated cutscenes, so they needed that reference material for what they looked like on all sides.
Yeah,
right. That makes sense.
And these illustrations, if I remember correctly, were drawn by someone who worked on the Dragon Ball anime, just to kind of get somebody that was really good at replicating Akira Toriyama's kind of distinctive style. And it's so cool to see new Chrono Trigger stuff coming up, and it makes
really
me...
is.
I gotta say, I've been thinking about this lately. We talked about Forever Entertainment, which remastering some Square games, but I stand by my statement that no matter who does it, I'm still getting it. Like, I would still buy it.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. Please, 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 Forever Entertainment, if you... do Chrono Trigger. If Square's just letting you do stuff, do Chrono Trigger. Just
don't mess it up.
Yeah, don't mess it up.
Yeah, just don't mess it up, right? Yeah.
Do your best.
But no, I mean, it's just so cool seeing anything new, you know. I mean, because I know for Steve, both of us, it's like our favorite game of all time. So just to see anything new from this game all this time later. I mean, at this point, I think we all figured, what else is there to see where Chrono Trigger is concerned? We've seen it all a billion times over. It's still an amazing game, but I never thought I'd see new material, and yet here we are. And it's so cool seeing these new angles on these beloved characters.
And
I never realized Isla was so cheeky.
It's really interesting also seeing stuff like this, because this is the kind of stuff that's typically not meant to be seen outside of the development studio. This is pretty... It's interesting in somewhat how mundane it is. Like, you don't see... You got the action shots on the left, which have been key art for years. But, like, the ones on the right, where they're just kind of, like, standing there so that you get a good view of where all the details on their outfits and stuff. It's like, that's neat that it's, like, a part of the game development process you don't normally get to peek in on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I absolutely love just seeing kind of how these characters that we all are more familiar with as sprite work came to be, and the more detailed origins of them. Oh man, if I could get like a Chrono Trigger remake that looked like this art.
I mean, it's just what I've been asking for years now, which is, well, not years, but a long time now. Chrono Trigger in the style of Dragon Quest XI.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's all I need.
That would be really cool.
It's perfect. I mean, it's made for that. Dragon Quest XI almost looks like you are playing a modern 3D version of Chrono Trigger's art style, because essentially you are, because it's still Akira Toriyama. So, God, just remake Chrono Trigger in Dragon Quest XI's engine, and it would be perfect. It would be perfect.
Oh,
it's also a shame too, because there's not really an easy way to get Chrono Trigger anymore. I guess there's the PC version, which
they did say is improved now.
Well, it's been improved, but a lot of
after
people consider
5 patches.
A lot of people consider the DS version to be the definitive one, but it's not cheap anymore. It was cheap for a while, but getting pre-owned copies even online is now getting to like $50-$60, so it's not really the accessible option it used to be, unfortunately.
Well, as I understand it, after 5 patches, the Steam version has finally more or less reached parity with the DS version, because I agree the DS version is also my favorite. But from what I've heard, compared to how it was when the Steam version first came out, I guess it was a mess, and embarrassingly so. Now apparently it's quite good. It just shouldn't have taken 5 patches to get there.
Man, you know what though? I will play the hell out of that if it means Chrono Trigger on my TV in an easy way. I mean,
that is true. You don't get that with the DS version.
Yep.
I mean, I'm still waiting for Square to give me the privilege of paying $24.99 or whatever for a standalone Switch version that would just be a port of the Steam version, but I'll still pay it.
I mean, it's odd that we've gotten a Mana collection, a Trials of Mana remake, and like a Final Fantasy Legends collection.
Right.
Where's the love for their other, like, okay, let's continue this SNES love and Game Boy love. Why not?
Does Bird Studio can hold any rights to Chrono Trigger? I don't know if that... I don't think they do.
I think so. I think they just did the animation from the PS1 version.
Yeah, they probably could just cut it if that was what the problem was. Like, just cut the cutscenes.
Yeah.
Well, Bird Studio is Toriyama's own company. And so I'm wondering if like he retains rights to any of the character designs or I doubt it though, because and even if he did, Square has a really great relationship with them still.
Yeah, exactly. He would not them using his designs again. I don't know how royalties work in this case, but I can only assume that means more money for him, and I don't think Toriyama's going to mind that.
Yeah, I think he likes money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just thinking they could even do like a Chrono Trigger Chrono Cross combo, because when was the last time Chrono Cross was re-released?
Never.
It's got to have been never. Like they've never even like put it on like.
Well, they might have put it on the PS3, PSN,
store, but that's not even going to be an option anymore.
I feel so bad for Chrono Cross because
me too.
I went in expecting Chrono Trigger 2, and I was like, this isn't one of the best games ever made. Get out of here. And I just never really bothered with it.
See, I think it's because I can't remember. I cannot remember if I played Cross or Trigger first, but I remember really liking Cross. and not minding the change in art style because I was like, whatever, it's still fun. I enjoyed the battle system. I'm not a fan of games with a huge cast because it feels like you never get to really focus on them. But never beat it because I never was able to pull off the Chrono Cross move. I was too young and couldn't quite figure it out. So I never got the true ending. But story up to that point was still great. Great cutscenes. Probably my favorite opening of all time.
Oh, it's
wow.
As far as the musical opening, like before the credits roll, that's holy crap.
Scars of
I was
Time.
obsessed. Yeah.
Or Time Scar, I guess. But no, Chrono Cross absolutely deserves better. And I think part of the problem, and it is Chrono Cross's fault, part of the problem it doesn't get better is because of its pacing. I do think it's pretty poorly paced, but if you can get through the parts that really have nothing to do with Chrono, or very little to do with Chrono Trigger, and get to like the Dead Sea, everything from the Dead Sea on is just in your face, incredible, awesome. Then it's at that point the game becomes the Chrono Trigger sequel you wanted to play, right?
So by badly paced, do you mean like just really slow to start?
It's just it kind of meanders in terms of if you're playing it as a Chrono Trigger sequel, that sequel content doesn't really come in until like halfway through the game or a little more than halfway. But if you're just taking on its own merits, I think it's actually great all the way through. It's just it kind of suffers as a Chrono Trigger sequel for the first half or so.
Like they try to find a new way of messing like the time changes that you would do for the side quest in Chrono Trigger with Cross because it's two different dimensions. So usually it's like having one character from one dimension meet another character from the other dimension and fixing things for them. And it's not quite as engaging in that sense, but still fun. I haven't replayed it in a long time, but I still own a disc, so I want to. I should at some point, but just haven't.
Nice.
Yeah, and as Jared Edinger in the chat says, the Dead Sea rules. It does, man. It so does. Once you get there, it's just chef's kiss all the way to the end.
So one thing real quick before we move on, I can't believe this. Edward Tenna in the chat is mentioning that Chrono Cross didn't even release in Europe, which, wow. I mean...
Yeah, Europe got screwed by RPGs for a long time.
Yeah, Europe didn't get a Final Fantasy till 7, a Dragon Quest until 8. I'm shocked they got... Yeah, they didn't get RPGs for a really long time.
Yeah. I want to point this out. Nintendo Life did a list of the best RPGs for the Nintendo DS, and they included that god-awful Sonic RPG, and now I feel like I understand why.
They had no options.
Yeah, they're like, it's the first one I ever saw.
As Aldudo points out, they didn't get Earthbound or Mario RPG, so...
And they didn't get Chrono Trigger on Super Nintendo initially. They had to wait until the DS version.
I guess it makes sense considering that if you're bringing it to Europe, you do have to translate for 5 different languages. But, I mean, still, for some of these games, even back then, they could have afforded to do that.
It's a shame. It really is, because I think a lot of those games would have done very, very well over there. And I get localization costs, like you mentioned. It's just, it's a shame because they could have done it and they probably would have made a lot of money. But, the game industry is full of weird, baffling decisions that someone with too much power in a room is like, well, that's going to be too hard. We're just not going to do that.
Eduardo Tena in the chat with a very fortunate typo here. They say Chronic Trigger only came out in Europe until the DS. Chronic Trigger, I feel, would be a very different game.
Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Chronic Trigger. Now I want that game. Anyway, someone kickstart Chronic Trigger with at least Dr. Dre and or Snoop Dogg, and I will back it.
I'll back that. Let's do it.
I don't have a segue for this, but moving on. Let me throw up this second story. I am hype as hell for this. A Judgment sequel is in development, which I think that just speaks for itself. Y'all in the audience know how much I absolutely adore Judgment. I think that it's not quite Yakuza, but it's close enough. It is the perfect gateway to the Yakuza series. More action-oriented, more story-driven, but it ditches just enough of the wackiness to make it believable. But the thing I like the most, number one, is that the main protagonist is actually a real actor. So it's modeled after a real human being. Because as much as I love Ichiban and as much as I love Kazuma, it's very evident that they're just characters that were designed in a sketch pad by someone at Sega. They're not very believable as real people. And that kind of contrasts a lot in their respective games, because there are characters within those worlds that are represented by real actors. So when you have someone that was designed by a character designer next to someone who is modeled after a real life person, you're like, there's something weird about this.
I actually just hit that on Yakuza Like a Dragon. I found out from my hardcore Yakuza fan friend that the Pound Mates are actually, not only are they characters from previous games, but those characters are themselves based on real people. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, but there's a little kind of weird, once you know that someone is actually a real person in one of those games, you can't help but notice the subtle differences between them and the made up characters. And that's, so I like that about Judgment, but Judgment also kind of, like I said, it's a little bit more action heavy, but martial arts action, whereas Yakuza is more street brawler. And I love that difference. I love that, what's his name? Yagami, right? I want to say
Yagami.
Yagami is a martial arts expert. And when he gets in fights, it's so much more satisfying, because you're just beating the ever-loving snot out of all these guys on the street, but with skill, not just, I mean, there's a lot to be said for picking up a bike and flailing it around in a crowd and just taking people out. But I like the kind of more nuanced approach Judgment's combat has. And I mean, this was a game I could not put down. I played it straight through every day for a week until I beat it, and I still wanted more. And I'm going to go back April 25th for the re-release of Judgment and do that again. So a sequel, I'm here for it. I am hyped for this. I will fight someone to get this.
Nice.
It's apparently the sequel is going to be called, the working title for it is Judgment Sees the Truth, and it's going to be apparently feel much darker. Ted will be interested in this, because I don't think you really play the Yakuza series, Ted.
It is a commitment that I have not yet started. I do want to try Like a Dragon, because that game looks hilarious and really fun.
And it loves Dragon Quest, so there you go.
But I also know that they are a big commitment. Every Yakuza game, I can tell, even if you're not going for all of the stuff, is fairly long. So I haven't hit my toes in quite yet.
The best way to describe Judgment that might interest you, from what I understand, is imagine Phoenix Wright getting disbarred and being like, no, screw this, I'm going to become a detective and beat up everybody in my way in order to solve the case.
Yep. That's a good way to describe
Apollo
it.
Justice was good. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah. Ted, I cannot recommend Yakuza Like a Dragon to you enough. Please make sure to make time for this game, because I agree. It took me a while to get to actually play it. I got it for the holidays from my sister-in-law, and I wanted it, but it just took me a while to actually get into it, just because time, right? But now that I've started it, I can't imagine not playing this game. It is phenomenal. It really is.
It is.
So,
one of the, I think it'll go down as one of the, well, I mean, the last generation's kind of over. To me, it's one of the best RPGs that was released in the last generation. And who knows
absolutely.
What this one will shape up as, but it is way up there.
Yeah. Azran127 in the chat with another of their S tier puns, saying, we need a game in that universe starring quadrupedal animals. Yakuza, if you will. That is one of your best.
Oh my
best
God.
Yet. That's really good. That's really good.
I don't even know what to say. I'm consistently impressed and horrified.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and speaking of RPGs, we have a lot more RPG stuff. This is just RPG news tonight, but let's throw our next
kind of
one
is, yeah,
up on the screen. And this next one comes courtesy of IGN Korea. So as you may know, Octopath just came out for Xbox. I'll play the trailer there while we talk. And apparently Octopath is not all we're getting. 6 or more Square Enix games will be on Game Pass. And they say it's already a done deal confirmed between Microsoft and Square Enix, and that the official announcement is only a matter of time. I mean, IGN usually doesn't go out on a limb like this unless they're sure. And I'm not familiar with IGN Korea's track record, but I have no reason not to, not to buy into it.
It makes sense because Dragon Quest XI is also on Game Pass, so they've done it with that. They've done it with Octopath. I think the interesting question is what games would end up on Game Pass, really.
Yeah,
I mean, is it safe to assume? I'm not familiar with what's already on Game Pass down to the game, but is it safe to assume that it would be like FF7,
FF7
Remastered,
is
FF9,
on Game Pass.
FF10 and 10.2? Okay,
those are on there. I think it's more like we might see like the Trials of Mana remake, the Collection of Mana, the Collection of Saga, maybe Saga Frontier. Trying to think of others that
Star
could be that.
R? Is that the new one?
Oh, First Departure R, maybe.
Maybe, but of course, the big ones would lead to speculation is could Kingdom Hearts end up going on Game Pass for Xbox, and could 7 Remake end up on Xbox?
Man, I gotta say, we talk about Microsoft and their failings everywhere outside of the U.S. quite often here. Especially because conversely, I think everyone that we've ever had on the show universally agrees that Game Pass is an awesome deal, like a great service that if you have even a passing interest in Xbox, you should have. I gotta say though, this is if this is true, if they're getting Square Enix games, especially newer Square Enix games on Game Pass, this might go a long way toward improving their fortunes outside of the U.S. in Japan specifically. Having a service you could subscribe to where you could get Square Enix games, relatively recent Square Enix games as part of that bundled service with hundreds of other games on a brand new console that is cheap in the case of the Series S for like, I don't know what they're charging for that in Japan, but it's ridiculously cheap compared to the Series X and the PS5. That is a hell of a alluring proposition. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be the thing that puts them in the conversation in Japan, but it definitely is a good start.
I think it helps. Go ahead, Ted.
Oh, sorry. I was just Xbox has tried to do these kind of RPGs, tap into that Japanese market things before. With stuff like, what Tales game was it? The one
Vesperia.
Vesperia, and then the only thing that happened was all of the fans wanted was the PS3 version instead.
Because a lot of times, like they get the companies would have these exclusive deals with Microsoft, put out a version, and then put out a better version on PS3 once the exclusivity was up, and Vesperia is one of those.
And, even if it doesn't make them part of the conversation in Japan, it'll definitely help, I think, rehabilitate their image among fans of Japanese games. Because, Microsoft in general, they have not been known for having the richest library of JRPGs and other Japanese-focused games. So I think that might help change that perception of them, which is just good for them in a broader sense, even if it doesn't make them blow up in Japan, right?
Yeah.
By the way, there are a few people in the chat clarifying that the entire Kingdom Hearts series is already on Game Pass. So that is not part of what is coming.
I was going to say, I knew Kingdom Hearts 3 was on Game Pass, but I didn't know any of the other older entries were. So that's good to know.
2.8, that's basically every game in the series then in some form, right?
Pretty much.
Minus like a mobile or DS game or two.
Even those are actually covered in Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5. The only one, I guess, 2.8 covers the mobile game too. So
that is, I'll say it again. I say it every time. Game Pass is a hell of a deal.
It is, but also like Kingdom Hearts. If you want to get Kingdom Hearts on PS4, have the complete saga, it's maybe $60 for like all the games.
I mean, that's
it's still
fair.
Fairly cheap, but
you can also stream all of those Game Pass games on xCloud, which is another interesting wrinkle. Like, I gotta admit, I've played xCloud. I mean, I've messed with every streaming service. I reviewed Stadia. I have Amazon Luna, which I just found out has No More Heroes, which is a whole other weird, interesting thing, because that would be the first ever PC port of those games, which hopefully that means Steam will get No More Heroes sometime. I would really like that a lot.
I just need a chance to play Lost Odyssey on something because I always hear great things about that game.
Get Game Pass and just play it in a web browser. There you go.
Right.
Right.
Maybe not the best way to play it, but it's playable. What I was going to say is that of all the streaming services I've used, and I've used them all, xCloud is a mile better than any of them. It truly feels like you're playing a device that's in your home. If you have it set up correctly on wired internet, play it on a PC, play it on something with really fast Wi-Fi, and use a controller for God's sake. But it's xCloud is an excellent service. Having Game Pass's library available within that is ridiculous. I could probably end up playing games like Kingdom Hearts if I was able to play them more passively on like a smaller screen rather than devoting, making my wife watch me play that and being like, what is this? What are you doing?
I would love to hear your take on just the insanity that is Kingdom Hearts. And I love it, of course, but I would love to hear your take, Steve. I think you'd have some spicy takes.
I feel like that's probably a thing I want to do at some point because my wife is a gigantic like Disney super fan. So I know that I could sell her on the idea of me playing through these, but I also know that she and I would both kind of tilt our heads at the screen on occasion and be like, what the fuck is going on here?
On occasion.
Kingdom Hearts is a very like specific taste. You either really like it or you don't get it. I unfortunately fall into the later camp. I played about 2 or 3 hours of Kingdom Hearts 1, didn't get it, put it down, and the other stuff I've seen of the other games, I'm just like, okay, not my thing, and I've moved on.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
makes sense.
I mean, Steve, if your wife is a hardcore Disney fan, she hasn't lived until she's seen Donald Duck seemingly sacrifice his life to cast Zeta Flare, man. You haven't seen, she hasn't lived yet.
They need to have
Goofy
that
take
as
a
an
bonk to the
attraction
head
in Disney
and
World.
seemingly die.
Right, yeah, Goofy seemingly dive with a boulder to the head, right. Yeah, man, Kingdom Hearts goes hard. I love it.
Man, I'll have to replay. I played through all of Kingdom Hearts 1, and then I played through all of Kingdom Hearts 2, and I was like, okay, obvious next step is Kingdom Hearts 3. And then they started doing like long division in the titles and talking about weird birth by sleep. That sounds unsettling and gross. I just imagine like an unconscious person birthing a child. I don't know, man. It makes me want to vomit. Anyway, are y'all, have you had enough of RPGs? Are you ready for more?
Never.
Tough.
Never.
Let's get our next story on the screen. Surprise! More RPGs. So this one is a bummer though. This is a huge downer.
Yeah.
So Nintendo Life reports Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi says that his latest project, Fantasian, could be his last. And I know that we've discussed apparent health issues for Sakaguchi here on TNT before. We've looked at
actually
Fantasian.
that was Uematsu, I believe, who had that.
I'm sorry, Uematsu. God.
Yeah.
Now I'm even sadder.
Because that's the thing. This game could be the last game for Uematsu and Sakaguchi now. So
what a
two
tale.
legends
Hurts, man.
ending
No,
with
that
this
hurts.
game.
Yeah, if you
Potentially.
want Final Fantasy music, Nobuo Uematsu, I believe, isn't he? No, I'm misremembering this, aren't I?
No.
No, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Final Fantasy.
He did all
to
the entire soundtrack through 1 through 9 and a good chunk of 10.
I feel better.
So.
I was like, that's the one composer I know.
And he's done
He also
one
did
song.
Blue Dragon.
Yeah.
Blue Dragon. He might have done Lost Odyssey. I can't remember.
I think he
either way.
might have.
He
did
and
Last Story.
Sakaguchi.
Sakaguchi
He did
and
some of the
Uematsu.
Saga games. He composed the main theme for Smash Brawl.
Right, he did. He also contributed a little bit to Chrono Trigger. He helped Mitsuda out after Mitsuda suffered, I think, what was a major computer crash. And
I think he
lost all of
also
his work.
did the entire base soundtrack of 14 Realm Reborn and then one extra track for each expansion. Right. So,
yeah.
Dang.
So this is just, Sakaguchi and Uematsu are clearly they're industry legends, especially for those of us who grew up with JRPGs and Final Fantasy. And
right.
This hurts, man. This hurts. It just sucks. I mean, obviously everybody gets older. Everything comes to an end sometime, but this just doesn't sit right with me. It's sad.
No, I agree.
I mean, at least his is more retirement.
Yeah. Real quick, the quote directly from Sakaguchi says, "I think it's certainly possible that this could be my last project, and that was kind of in the back of my mind as we were developing it." So, I mean, that reads like, he knows that this is probably one of, if not his very last game. And from what I've seen of Fantasian, it looks pretty interesting. I know that, Derek, you were mentioning this earlier, and you can see it in the photo Nintendo Life shared. They created kind of diorama set pieces, which comprise the backgrounds for every scene in the game. That is a Herculean effort. And initially, I was not sold on that idea. But I went ahead and subscribed to Apple Arcade because I had passing interest in a few of the games on the service, as well as this one. And I've since kind of looked at trailers and more screenshots, and I am hyped for this. I really
they enhance those dioramas through the game engine. It's not just a static thing. It's and the character runs around and awkwardly. It really is just allows you to lose yourself in it and get this game off of Apple Arcade. Do not make it exclusive. Get it on other consoles, for the love of God.
Yep. This is another one of those FF7 Ever Crisis situations where I'll play it regardless, but I would so much rather play it on a console.
I'd also just like to have a physical version so it doesn't die should somebody drop a truck on Apple's server somewhere and you can't, and they don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want this tied to a digital-only storefront. I want this to be available as a physical purchase. Right now, it is only announced for iOS, which means that physical game is completely not in the cards. But I can't imagine that it's going to stay there. I think it's going to be like Shantae, where we're going to see it come to other platforms, but it'll be a timed exclusive or something. It'll be on Apple Arcade for 6 months or a year, and then they'll announce it for other consoles, because I feel like you don't put, and I hate to say this because it's kind of like a stereotype, if you will, but you don't put that kind of effort into just a game that's only ever going to be on a phone. Usually this is reserved for games that are multi-platform or AAA console exclusives. This has that air to it versus, oh, hey, people are going to play this while they're on the toilet.
It's not the kind of game that I feel like people play on their phone as well. It looks to be a full-up JRPG, with all of the depth and complexity that a JRPG comes with. And a lot of phone games they can certainly be complex and have a lot of moving parts, but they're meant to be digested in small bits, and they're also usually free. Mobile gamers don't like to pay for a game up front. They want to be able to play for it free if they want. So,
I think it was also revealed that it's going to be a 2-part game, with the first part set to come soon, and the second part coming in the latter half of 2021. But each part is 20 to 30 hours of gameplay.
Whoa!
Well,
wow. Okay.
I can tell you, I'm going to be gaming the system, as it were, and playing this console style. I'm going to set up my Apple TV and get my Switch Pro controller paired to it and just play it on my TV. That's how I'm going to do this.
Play it.
Yeah.
That is also how I'm going to play Ever Crisis if I can.
Yeah. Same.
I hope it comes to other things, because I just don't want to have to go through Apple Arcade to play this.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I feel like it's probably my least favorite way to play a game, but also, like a iOS or an Apple TV is like what, $100, and I get paying $100 to play one game kind of sucks, but I mean it's like a Netflix device. I think I have one sitting around my house somewhere. Anyway, we've got still a few more stories here. So are y'all ready for some more RPG? I'm just kidding. There's no more. Our next story is one that I find really interesting. So Sony and PlayStation Productions are developing a Ghost of Tsushima movie, and the director from John Wick is directing it, which I think is an interesting choice. I've not seen a John Wick movie.
Really?
You haven't.
I haven't.
Oh, man.
That, man.
I haven't either. I'm
man.
Oh, they're so good.
You're missing out. It's
so
just
good.
Is it?
So,
I mean, okay.
I mean, you're not going in there for exact plot, but you know at least the basis for the first movie's plot, right, Steve?
I think somebody kills his dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a widower mourning his wife, who he got out of assassination for to be with, and then she passed away, and so he's just sort of on his own. He's still feeling mournful for her, but in her last act, she got him the most adorable frickin' puppy ever. However, a dumb crime boss son decides that he wants to rob this dude, not knowing who he is, and in the process of the robbery, because he catches off guard, kills his dog. And the entire movie is just him getting revenge for this dog, going after this one dumb kid.
I love it. He
the
goes
mafia.
on a legit murder spree, the most violent murder spree you can imagine to avenge his dog, and I am there for it. It's such
and
a
you
good
know,
series.
like you see this dog, it's like, yeah, you get it, and then it just builds up, and it just the sequels are basically just like, okay, because you took this action and you're back in the game now. You're back in the game now. You're stuck, and you're kind of just like got to deal with all this crap again.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff.
That's
really
interesting to me.
It goes to show what they say about how you can't hurt a dog in a movie, because people will get more upset about that than anything you would do to a human being.
Yeah,
It's so true.
Everybody I've talked to about John Wick is just like, yeah, well, they killed his dog, so they deserve it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that
that's
they
pretty much
deserve
what
it.
I
It's
say.
more just like you messed with the wrong person. Like in the movie, it's like, oh crap, you messed with John Wick. Oh, bye.
Oh, Derek, I'll go all the way and say LA absolutely had it coming. They killed his dog, and they had it coming. They sure did, man. Are you kidding me?
So I want to bring this.
His body count is crazy.
I want to bring this
It's
back
absurd.
real quick. So I know that y'all haven't played Ghost of Tsushima, but it draws a lot, and I mean like a ridiculous amount of inspiration from old samurai flicks.
Right.
Very specifically like Akira Kurosawa films. Do you guys think that this director can pull off that vibe?
Yes. I from my again, I'm only going off of John Wick, but there is kind of a samurai aspect to it where he's just this lone guy beaten down by life and but just needing to just this iron will to live, because yeah, he's badass, but he also gets the crap beat out of him through these movies. Like he is exhausted as he's going through and just barely going through adrenaline trying to take this out. And you can imagine a samurai having that same feeling of just like, oh God, I gotta kill these people too now, because they just won't stop, leave me alone.
Yeah. I played the first few hours of Ghost of Tsushima, and I have certain reservations about whether John Wick's style of action can fit in a Tsushima movie, but I do believe it's possible. I'm confident.
I'm looking up his other stuff that he's done now. Oh, he's only done the John Wick movies.
So
Right.
He was a
I will
sorry,
say
go ahead.
this, and I agree with Odd Doodle in the chat. Daisuke Tsuji is the person who not only voices Jin Sakai in Ghost of Tsushima, but is also the actor after which the in-game model was created.
Ooh.
So I hope that they cast him, because one, he did an excellent job with his voice talent in the game, but two, I'm starting to see what you guys are talking about, because there are some similarities here. So John Wick kills, apparently, according to you guys, shit tons of people in the game, or in the movie. I apologize. And he's like a one-man wrecking crew, right? And Ghost of Tsushima is very similar. Like, it starts out with your whole army getting decimated, and it's just you. Like, you're the only survivor. And you find like maybe one or two allies along the way, but you are fighting off an invasion force by yourself. So I could kind of see the similarities in between, like, John Wick, this one badass going up against tons and tons of people and just offing them. And Jin Sakai is very similar. They're both out for revenge. It's one person against many, and they're considered to be extremely skilled in the art of ending lives.
I mean, I just looked up, like, he's only directed the John Wick movies, but he's been in Hollywood since 1994 with The Crow, because he started out as a stunt double. And his list of like stuff he's done stunt doubles for and coordinating, like he did this martial arts stunt coordinating for Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions. He's done the Expendables, the original Expendables, where is it? 47 Ronin, The Wolverine, Deadpool 2, Ninja Assassin. He has a prolific career in getting these creating. Oh, here it is, Dredd. I was thinking Dredd.
Oh, the Judge Dredd reboot.
Yeah, the Judge Dredd reboot was also fantastic. Like at the very least, with this guy at the helm, we're going to get some good fights.
This might actually have a chance of crossing the gap, because I feel like a lot of video game movies have trouble expanding beyond the gamer audience, which is part of why they traditionally don't do great. But I feel like you could sell your average person on John Wick with Samurai. Like, I feel like that's a very easy sell for most people.
I mean, there like I said, there are so many scenes within the game that really feel like they'd be right at home in a movie. And like I said, a movie, like you implied, Ted, a movie that would not necessarily be limited to your traditional gamer audience. There's, right. I mean, it felt like I was playing a samurai movie, and I know so many people that love that specific genre of film, but could not care less about video games. So right. I'll be interested to see where this lands in terms of audience reception, because I'll be honest, I don't expect a great critical reception for this movie. I think critics are going to be like, yeah, it's a guy with a sword, he kills lots of people.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'll be excited, though. I'll definitely go see it. I think that they could do a really good job.
Same.
I hope, and I'm just going to put my hands together on this one, we do not need white people playing Asian people in this movie. Please and thank you very fucking much.
Sure.
Yeah. Please, no.
John Wick has a pretty diverse cast, so I'm not too worried about that.
Right. As long as they don't avatar this, I'm certainly interested.
Yeah.
But yeah. Don't race bend Jin Sakai.
Don't Last Samurai this.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Exactly,
I remember working at Target and having to put out the DVD of The Last Samurai and just looking at Tom Cruise in samurai armor and being like, come on, man, what the fuck?
I mean,
The Last Samurai is the dude from Top Gun? Bullshit.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yeah, and I really do hope they get Daisuke Tsuji to reprise it.
That'd be really
I think
cool.
That would be really cool, and it would give me a lot of confidence in the film.
Yeah, agreed. The only reason I could see them not is maybe he's not so great at, action, like actual physical action stuff.
Yeah.
He's a great voice talent. I just don't know if he could actually, convincingly cut down people.
Sure.
But I agree that would be the ideal casting for me as someone who's played the game and has listened to him read the script. I would be all there for it. But I guess we'll see. All right. We're technically going back to RPGs now. Technically.
Technically, sure.
Here we go.
Sure.
So SEGA is officially the most well-reviewed video game publisher of 2020. As if 2020 couldn't have gotten weirder.
Right. I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to know. So they say, let's take a quick look here. This says 2020 may have been a terrible year for everyone, but for the games industry, it was one of the best trips around the sun ever recorded. Over on Metacritic, the review aggregation website, had a look at which game publishers were the most critically successful and went through the entire 2020 library of games for the biggest winners of the year. And they landed on SEGA, and I guess that's on the strength of Persona 5 Royal and games like Yakuza Like a Dragon. So
exactly,
RPGs win.
And not to mention
Rage 4 and 13 Sentinels.
Right.
Also.
Exactly.
Oh, I had no idea that
Yeah.
SEGA was involved with the publishing of Streets of Rage 4. I actually didn't know that. Huh. Well,
and
that makes
13
sense.
Sentinels.
Yeah, Streets of Rage 4 is also like the best beat 'em up ever made, and you should all play it.
It is
No, it's great.
so phenomenal. Yeah. And
Oh yeah,
I love
Sakura
this.
Wars as well. So and that did very
There
well.
you go. Yeah, I just love to see this. I love Sega. Sega needs some good news, and it's very easy to clown on Sega, and they do it to themselves. To be fair, stuff like Sonic Forces. I mean, yeah, they do it to themselves, but so much of what they do outside of Sonic does tend to be very good. And of course, I've been extolling the virtues of Yakuza 7, but that's just one of many games here that really has been well received, and I love to see it. 2020 really couldn't have gotten weirder. I didn't think it could have, but I do love to see that Sega is on top in terms of the quality of their games.
Oh man, I have to mention this real quick while we're talking about Sega. I was so bummed today that I missed out on the Astro City Mini pre-order.
Right.
That tiny Sega arcade cabinet that it's like a miniature console that plays Virtua Fighter, which is really cool. Along with a ton of other never released arcade games from Sega's library. But I find it interesting that the year without Sonic is the year that they achieved this.
That's so sad.
Go figure.
Yeah, that's so... Because any and all of the goodwill that Sonic Mania, absorbed for Sega, and every ounce of it was deserved, Sonic Forces didn't ruin all of it, but it certainly kind of took a bit of the wind out of Sonic Mania's sails.
Absolutely.
And so I think they kind of canceled each other out.
Yeah. Interestingly, for the top 10, because they did a whole top 10 of this, it went Sega, Annapurna Interactive, so just great quality from them all around.
Which is awesome. I love Annapurna.
Capcom, then Sony, Activision Blizzard, Xbox Game Studios, Axis Games, No More Robots, Nintendo at number 9, and then Devolver Digital. So
good list. Good
interesting
list.
list.
And again,
yeah.
I love to see Annapurna at number 2. Their name to me has gotten big enough that in terms of the games I love from them, that whenever I see their logo and they're publishing something, I immediately sit up and pay attention. Because they did Sayonara Wild Hearts, I adored that game.
Oh,
and,
that game's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. So, yeah, I'm really glad to see Annapurna getting the credit they deserve for their really well-considered publishing projects.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely it's a weird company. I initially was very turned off by Annapurna Interactive just because I was like, who the hell are these people? This is one of the weirdest, most off-putting publisher names I've ever heard. It just sounds like a giant corporation has decided to start publishing games. But their content is consistently great. I mean, they definitely know how to pick them in terms of what they publish.
Yeah, they really do.
I used to just think they were the Donut County guys.
But yeah, I mean, they have an amazing gameography. What Remains of Edith Finch, Flower, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Kentucky Route Zero, If Found, The Unfinished Swan. They've done a lot of really good stuff. And they're also doing Solar Ash, that the indie game that looks really good, coming out this year. For PS5, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I do want to check that one out too. Man, there's a lot of good games coming out this year, and I feel like it's starting to pick up.
Yeah,
steam.
there really are. It's rough.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Solar Ash is PS5, PS4, and Windows.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'll check it out eventually, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I feel like with the name, you should be the one to review that. Just
That's true. Actually, I probably should be. Yeah.
Solar Ash. All right.
Yeah.
Let's from games that are great.
The best of Sega to...
Yeah. All right. Well, sorry about this, Yuji. But apparently Balan Wonderworld's final boss was, and I'm going to say was, potentially seizure-inducing. So if you haven't been following Balan Wonderworld, it is an interesting game. But earlier this week, video of the final boss started to leak on Twitter, or rather just release on Twitter as reviewers started to publish impressions of the game, and it was revealed that there's just a flashing light pattern during the final boss battle that I'm not epileptic, I'm lucky, but I can't imagine somebody...
It just feels like a massive visual glitch. It just goes white at one point. It's like, what the...
It looked like my computer screen
flashes white.
Was glitching out on me. It was... Oof.
Yeah, I initially thought the same.
Yeah, I checked it out. I'm not epileptic either, but apparently it's bad enough that it poses a danger to even non-epileptic. So I only watched a little bit of it, and yeah, if I was playing that, I would legit have thought there's something wrong with my TV. I don't know how that made it through QA.
Yeah.
Something went terrible.
The fact that had to be a day one patch, and thankfully, day one patch gets rid of it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But
right,
the fact that it was there in the first place.
I've seen this game referred to on the internet as Nights into Screams, which I think is actually perfect. It's so good.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
That's
too
the thing.
good.
I'm so mad I can't find who said this, but they said about so Square Enix didn't send out review code until the day of. I've put in 2 hours from it, and I thought I should say how Balan Wonderworld holds up. It sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
I kind of felt that this was going to be what happened. It's always telling when PR just goes quiet on you.
Oh yeah,
because there's usually two flavors of PR responses, and there's enthusiastic and not at all. And so when they change gears and go from enthusiastic to not at all midway through the cycle, that usually means one of two things. One, you have severely screwed up and you're probably never going to get code from these people again. Or two, they have realized that they are about to fence you a hot turd, and they've just decided that maybe the internet is better off not hearing your opinion. So,
and that's kind of what
maybe we can get
right,
some
Steve?
suckers.
Yeah. Say what?
That's kind of what happened to us, right? We think.
Yeah, I think so, because we had been initially in talks with Square about getting a review copy of Balan Wonderworld, and they seemed very enthusiastic about that. We emailed back and forth a few times, and then the communication just stopped. And I mean, I've played the demo. I kind of knew what was up. Yeah. I didn't bother poking them too much. I was like, hey, are we still doing this? And nothing came in reply. So I was like, yeah, they know. Either that or they just saw one of the many clips on Twitter of me making fun of the game, which, sorry.
Yeah, right. I would still like to stream this game just to see the comedy of just jank that is this game. And I'd like to just, experience how ridiculous and
see, I'm not sure if it's going to be the jank. I think it's just going to be boring. That's all it looks like.
It might be. Yeah, that's true too. But also, as much as I would like to stream it and react to it with people, not for $60, man. I'm gonna wait. Not paying $60 for that game.
There's those videos of the final boss, and obviously the glaring thing is the lights giving you a headache. But also, it doesn't do anything. Like the way that the boss looks, it just kind of stands there like this, and then occasionally its arms will move up and down while the body doesn't move, and it's like,
right.
What a disappointment, man. I remember that trailer at E3 looked so cool, and oh god.
And there's the one boss in the demo, the possessed demon farmer, whatever. It requires pretty much zero effort to beat. It is the most formulaic boss fight that just felt like it was pulled right out of like an early aughts 3D platformer. And even that might be insulting to early aughts 3D platformers. It was just so easy, and it didn't take any thought. There was no inventiveness to it. It looked pretty cool. It sounded pretty cool, but there just wasn't much engagement. And yeah, it's really a shame what happened with this game, and it deserved better, man.
Yeah, I'm reminded when I watch that final boss fight of games that were designed during an era when 3D was new, and they would assume that the player would have no clue what the hell they were doing with an analog stick. And so I'm like, could you imagine? Like, I looked at it did the very typical thing that 3D platformer bosses did in that era of like the late 90s, early aughts, where it would send shockwaves through the arena and you had to jump between the shockwaves one at a time. I mean, even Bowser did that. But they're spaced out so wide that anybody who's ever played a 3D platformer would not screw this up. And I was just, I was like, this is the final boss. Like, I didn't expect much from this game.
There was no intensity to it whatsoever. Good music, but no intensity.
Yeah. This is not a game. This is a game I would probably fall asleep playing. No joke. I would likely not finish it. I would lose consciousness during well, my brain has decided I'm too bored to continue being awake.
It's definitely one I would crit path. Like, I would not try to 100% it for sure. If I played it at all, I would crit path it.
It looks like the video game equivalent of the bad Nick Jr. shows, Because, obviously there are games meant for young children, but are still engaging for older audiences, your Yoshis and Kirbys and stuff like that. But this is like the Franklin of video games, for young children, but not even, engaging for young children. Like,
right,
just bad. I apologize to Franklin fans out there, but my brother
I'm
liked
hoping
that
it's
show and it was awful.
Franklin
I'm hoping
is
it
a
ends up
bitch
being
of a
closer
turtle.
to.
I think
Right?
I think
Yeah.
the commonly despised one is Calio, or however the hell.
Oh,
it's spelled.
Caillou?
Caillou.
Oh,
Caillou.
Caillou. Oh, God.
My
Fuck
wife
Caillou.
hates Caillou. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
One Punch Man.
Caillou
I'm
is
hoping
bald
it
because
ends
his
up
parents shave his head in his sleep because they hate him.
right. Yeah, everybody hates Caillou. I hope that this game ends up being closer to the Room of video games. We'll see how it actually shakes out.
I honestly,
But-
looking at the footage, it doesn't look incompetent. It looks just boring, and that's
Bad.
worse.
Yeah. Shell Shock. Oh, go ahead, Ted.
Oh, I was just going to say, the whole thing reminds me of Sonic Boom, especially the way that
Oh,
PR
yeah.
was interesting on it to start, and then they just kind of stopped talking about it and hoped that
Yeah.
nobody remembered the game exists.
Right. Shell Shock Prime in the chat has a very important question for you, Steve. Is it worse than Little Town Hero?
He'd have to play it, I'd say.
Oh
You'd have
man,
to play
I
it, but
don't know.
Do you think it looks worse than Little Town Hero?
So Little Town Hero, like, oh man, that is really
Is that
tough.
that
I would,
Game Freak game?
yeah,
Yes.
Oh, I forgot
Man.
how bad that was. Oh my god.
yeah. I'm.
Did you actually play it, Ted?
I didn't know. I didn't. I watched Steve's review and was like,
Yeah, man, fuck Little Town Hero. But I would have to say, from what I've played, from what the limited amount I've played, I would probably say Balan Wonderworld is still better than Little Town Hero because
Okay.
there is no element of luck in whether or not you win a level in Balan Wonderworld, whereas Little Town Hero, like, imagine you're already playing, because both games at a base level, I'm playing a game I don't want to play. I am somehow in this situation where I have forced myself into playing a piece of shit game, but I am then, like, Little Town Hero is like, hey, guess what? We're gonna roll dice repeatedly to decide whether or not you get to be done with this game. In Balan Wonderworld, I'm like, I just gotta find, like, the weird hat dude and maybe the chicken suit, and then walk to a goal and watch a farmer dance for a little bit, and then I can go home. So if I was presented with both options, I would definitely choose Balan Wonderworld, although it's not fully grounded in, like, I'm not fully educated on whether or not I'm making a bad choice there.
Right.
Oh, that is I hurt having had to answer that.
You want to go to good news now?
Yeah. So
Steve?
to end our show, we have a really good story, and I love that I get to read this at the end of the show. So I'm going to throw that up on screen now. And this came to us in our DMs on Twitter. I mean, like most good stories, right? But Chai Koopa on Twitter pointed this out. Nintendo has actually promoted same-sex dating in Miitopia for the Switch. So I remember previously in the American version, in the Japanese version, you just couldn't do this, if I remember correctly. But in the Japanese version, they're no longer calling it like a friendship event or some... They're not trying to sidestep it any longer. So you can see two Japanese screenshots, both which feature same-sex couples, and it very clearly calls that out as a date. You can ask a same-sex person
awesome.
out on a date, which, fuck yeah. This is
I mean,
great.
I see a response to this in the Twitter post, and they basically say, it kind of was like that in the 3DS version. It just wasn't explicitly said. It's just high friendship levels, but they're cuddling in the in-rooms while hearts fly out. There's no heterosexual explanation for that.
Right. Yeah,
So-
absolutely. You could basically go on a date, but they would go out of their way to not
But they're
call it
finally
that.
calling it that.
Yeah,
And that's the good thing.
And that's a major step, especially because no one would have really expected Nintendo to do that, I don't think. So good on Nintendo. I love the fact that people don't have to feel like there's something other than what they are when they play games like this.
Another interesting thing from this one is a quote from years ago, back in the Tomodachi's time, where they said, at Nintendo, dedication has always meant going beyond the games to promote a sense of community and to share a spirit of fun and joy. We are committed to advancing our longtime company values of fun and entertainment for everyone. We pledge that if we create a next installment in the Tomodachi series, we will strive to design a gameplay experience from the ground up that is more inclusive and better represents all players. And they held to it. Holy crap, they held to it.
They actually held to it, and there's nothing. I mean, this is just an objectively great, positive story, period. And I'm just so happy about this. And this is something that should have happened in Tomodachi Life as well. And if Miitopia Switch does well, maybe we'll get an HD re-release of
Tomodachi.
God, Tomodachi Life as well that incorporates same-sex romance. And I hope we do.
Yeah, I think that there's never ever a good reason to leave something like this out. So just seeing that that there's more representation in these games is a good thing. The more you can represent the people that are playing your games, the better. And
especially in a game like this, where it's all about you put your friends in these funny situations. Like, you want to be able to have these people act the way that they would act in the real world. So, or not act the way that they would in the real world because you think it's funny, but if you want to recreate your two friends who are dating in real life and they happen to be same sex, you can't do that in the game before this, and now you can, which is really nice.
Yeah,
right. Although, as Ditto M in the chat does point out, we still have a long way to go. As they say, represent yourself in a game, huh? Now, if only Monster Hunter Rides had hairstyles for black people instead of just a 70s era afro. And I haven't played it myself, the final version, but I absolutely believe you, Ditto M, if you played it, and that's the case. And so as great as this is, we can't become complacent. We do have a long way to go in terms of equal and fair representation.
Agreed. Yeah, I think this is a good
black
start.
hair often just looks like white hair, just in the different styles. So there's steps being taken. I've seen a few games really approach that, but it's definitely not across the board.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's still a ton of work to be done on, like you said, physical representation even is a huge thing. And black hair in video games is definitely one of those areas where nobody does a really great job. I will say Miles Morales, I think, did a very good job with it. But
right.
Did he change his hair in Miles Morales?
Oh no, I just mean his default hair and that of other folks around him. Because there are lots of people of color in Miles Morales, and I think they're pretty well represented. The writer of that game, Evan Narcisse, did this whole essay on how video games get black people's hair wrong, and so when he was attached to the game, I'm like, I bet they're going to get this right.
Yeah,
and by and large,
my wife saw me playing Miles Morales, and she was impressed. She was like, wow, they actually kind of got his hair right. And I was like, hey, you know what? If you say that, that's all the confirmation I need. So,
one good thing I think about this, though, is that it's for the same-sex dating and stuff like that, is that it's coming from a Japanese game. And especially in Japan, same-sex relationships aren't as represented as well in a lot of things. I remember, God, I need to pay attention to the news more. There was a law that passed in Japan recently where I think, oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. Something about same-sex relationships was lifted. So I think that things are going to get better, but obviously it's just going to take a lot of time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Culturally, Japan still kind of lags behind other parts of the world in that regard. I mean, you just watch anime. Look at Puri Prisoner from One Punch Man, and you don't need to go far to find very poor representation.
I was enjoying that manga so much until I saw him, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's
a
a lot of it's played for jokes.
Yeah, they still lean hard into the whole haha, this is funny kind of thing, which not cool, man. It really sucks. But anyway, I don't want to bring this down because this is a really great story to end both the show and the week on. So I just want to I want to stop it there. I think we had a good discussion. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. Let everybody have a light beginning to their weekend. But Indeed. Before, and like I said, with that, sounds like we've covered all the news, a lot of it today. So glad we could end on a good story. But before we sign off, Ted, tell us where our audience can find you and the cool stuff you're doing.
So I'm a member of BrainScratch Commentaries. We do playthroughs of a lot of Nintendo games, retro games, some modern games on YouTube. I also occasionally stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/xnshadow. I always say that I'm going to start streaming more regularly and then never do that. So maybe I will stick with that one of these days and actually stream more than once a week. But, we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, this is the madman who 100% did Hyrule Warriors. What is it? Was it Definitive Edition that you eventually did?
Edition on Switch.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Between all 3 versions of Hyrule Warriors 1, it took me over 1,000 hours. Yeah. But I also have not finished story mode in Age of Calamity, which is also weird. So,
wow.
Maybe I burnt out. I don't know.
You think?
Yeah, 1,000 hours. Shit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we sign off, we have to give a special thanks to all of our patrons at the producer tier for helping to make this show happen. Really, we could not do this without everybody's generous support. We appreciate y'all so much, especially those y'all showing up for a weird Xbox stream in the middle of the morning. As well, we have to give a massive thank you to our patrons at the executive producer tier and above. And those fine folks are Jared Editor, Brandon Bovia, Rob Arman X, Dan and Twistle, Z Patty, Hyrule Hermit, Sky Blue Flames, Adam O'Sullivan, Richard Herrera, Floating Mew, Aiko Carroll, Christopher, The Deep Path, Vesmio, Waffle Cake, Nick Waterman, Kitty Kong Facts, Angel Martinez, Vedran Houghton, Macalau, John, Joshua Hunter, Evernight Studio, Benny Yao, Shadow the Cat, Alicia, Azran 127, Kenrule09, Jake Pelka, Geller, Shiny Turkey, Joseph Rutkin, Titus Malvolio, Charlie Bird, Lucky Wonderfish, Top Dog 23100, Young Ben Kenobi, Charles Zoggs, Douglas Chalmers, Andrew Medeiros, Orem M, Phantom 23, Scott Barber, Patrick Harrison, Becca, Rox the Cat, Fizzywig Hoyd, Loyal Dingo, Flaming Highwayman, Sean Garrett, The Legend of Bruce, Eddie B, Kayed, Kit Fisto, Westlake, Master Links, Sean Davis, Denis, Jackson Jordan, Michael McCaw, Matthew Wong, Ashish Joshi, Goron Amber, Straight Links, Hoovy, Wolfex Blake and Moon Macarons, Kane, Captain Finlandia, 60 minutes and 60 seconds, The Game Lord, Dano the Artist, Synchro Lord, Brainchild, My Mom, Hi Mom, The Flying Tacos, Scuff 196, Skull Kid Tiger, AJB Cool, Chip Damage Mike, Jason Uloa, Jaden Buck, Phantom Project, Wheezy Penguin, and our new executive producer. Welcome to the EP Squad, Anthony Wilson Jr. Woo! Indeed. Now, remember, you too can become a patron over at patreon.com/GDgaming, where you can watch today's news tonight live and get our exclusive post show for as little as $5. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, good night. Bye, everybody. Indeed. All right. You can stop your audio recording, and we are going to roll on into